Professor Carell adjusted his plum-colored robes and leaned over the podium with the air of someone about to say something historic, or at least enjoy hearing himself try. In all the vast, seething chaos of early galactic evolution, he said, sweeping a hand across the holographic star map behind him, there once existed a class of beings known as Deathworlders. Creatures of improbable resilience, capable of surviving worlds with toxic atmospheres, crushing gravity, and biomes so hostile, even the air was a threat. A ripple of intrigue passed through the lecture hall. Hundreds of students from 12 species sat in polished tiers, murmuring, whispering guesses, comparing myths. Carell let the silence linger before delivering the line he'd waited all semester to say. "Fortunately," he said with a knowing smirk, "such creatures are long extinct." Laughter followed. Light, uncertain at first, then emboldened by the professor's own grin. Several students nodded in agreement, relieved to place such monsters firmly in the realm of ancient history. Only one student didn't laugh. Seated in the back row, arms folded across his chest, the human watched with an expression caught somewhere between amusement and disappointment. He hadn't said a word all term, hadn't answered questions or raised his hand. Most thought he was a visiting observer from a fringe research program. His species wasn't listed on the roster. Most assumed he was a Lenzoan albino or a mutated Neverial. None of them had ever seen a human before. And yet here he was. Waiting. Carell continued, blissfully unaware. You see, Deathworlds are not simply hostile. They are mathematically improbable homes for intelligence. Earth, for example, is the most laughable of them all. Oxygen-rich atmosphere, highly reactive. Liquid water? Everywhere. Electromagnetic instability, shifting tectonics, and predators that can stalk you by scent alone. It's absurd. The very idea that sentient life could evolve under such conditions? Ridiculous. The few recovered artifacts suggest only primitive tool use before the biosphere inevitably consumed them. A furry yellow student near the front raised a paw. "Professor, is it true that Earth once had sentient bipeds?" Carell gave a dramatic sigh. "Ah, yes. The Homo sapiens myth. Legend tells of hairless primates who walked upright, hunted in packs, and domesticated fire. But those tales come from scattered Terran satellites and decayed archives, most of them corrupted or exaggerated by the centuries. In truth, no such beings could have survived past their primitive age. Evolution doesn't reward stubbornness on hostile worlds, it punishes it." More laughter. More nods. Except from the back row. The human, now uncrossing his arms, leaned forward slightly. He hadn't moved this much in weeks. Eyes like tempered steel scanned the room. No one noticed until he raised a hand. Carell blinked. "Yes, student?" The hall turned with him. Even the ventilation system seemed to quiet. The man stood. "Name's Alex," he said. "I'm from Earth, and Deathworlders aren't extinct." Gasps echoed off the polished Plaz walls. One student dropped a stylus. Another leaned so far forward, their ridged antennae dipped into the row below. Carell's brow furrowed, but only for a moment. Then came the smile again, patronizing, tired. "That's quite the claim," he said, chuckling lightly. "You understand, we've reviewed thousands of planetary bioscans. Earth's classified as a Tier 5 hostile world, uninhabitable by known sapient physiology. You're saying you're human?" Alex's reply came smooth, but hard. "Yes." "And you come from this death world?" Carell pressed, voice rising with disbelief. "Born there, raised there, bled there, and I'd still be there if the Institute hadn't asked for a diplomatic observer to sit in on your lectures." Carell's mouth opened, then closed. His second eyelids fluttered. His tentacled assistant began fiddling nervously with the control node. Then the alarm sounded. Not a drill. A klaxon, deep and metallic, reverberated through the hall, followed by the sharp hiss of pressure doors sealing in the upper levels. Every being froze. Even Carell paled an impressive feat for a species with blue-green skin. "Attention," came the synthetic voice over the comm system. "Containment breach in Biological Wing C. Apex specimen 4 Corax has escaped primary restraints. Warning. Level 4 predator protocols in effect." Screams broke out immediately. The hall shifted from surprise to panic like a switch flipped. Students shoved toward the exits, wings, tails, hooves clattering. One large arachnid like being scaled the wall in pure fear. Carell backed against the wall, fumbling for his emergency communicator. Security! Why isn't the subfield up? No response. The air grew tense. The sound of splintering metal echoed from the corridor just outside the lecture hall. Then the doors burst open, and the predator entered. It was larger than most sentients in the room, hunched low but fast shoulders like compressed alloy, back rippling with muscle under armored scales. It wasn't rampaging yet, just stalking. It sniffed the air. One of the students screamed again. That was enough. It charged. The room detonated into chaos. Desks overturned. A security drone zipped in and was torn apart in 2 swipes. A Zavani student tripped and was pulled to safety by 2 more. The predator was smart. It didn't just lash out. It targeted the slow, the separated, efficient, terrifying. Except it stopped. Mid-stride. Because someone had stepped in its path, Alex. Unarmed, no shield, no armor, just a black t-shirt, cargo pants, and boots made for trudging through ash. He didn't flinch. He didn't yell. He just looked at it. A long, quiet look that didn't waver. And then he said it. 1 word. Stay. The predator hesitated. Not confusion, not fear, something else. Recognition. The room froze as the creature shifted its weight. 1 claw scraped the floor. Its nostrils flared. Stay, Alex repeated, firmer now, not loud but final. It stepped back. The entire hall held its breath. Another step, and then another. The apex predator lowered its massive head and backed toward the door it had torn through, disappearing slowly, warily, without turning its back on Alex. And just like that, it was gone. Silence collapsed over the room like a vacuum. Seconds passed before the overhead lights returned to white, before backup drones swept into the room with tranquilizer pulses now pointless. Carell stared. Alex turned to the professor, deadpan. Maybe next time, wait until the specimen's back in the cage before mocking species you don't understand. Carell opened his mouth, but said nothing. Security entered in force, scanning the area, too late for anything but cleanup. A medical assistant hovered toward Alex, visibly confused. Sir, you're unharmed? She asked, scanning him head to toe. Didn't touch me, Alex said. Didn't need to. But protocol says. I know what protocol says. Still, they insisted. He sat for scanning. Heart rate elevated but within range. No injuries, no lacerations, no signs of foreign saliva or airborne contagion. Just a human who had stared down one of the deadliest life forms in the known galaxy and told it what to do. The staff logged the anomaly. The news would hit the networks in less than a cycle. And Carell, still pale and shaking, looked at his podium as if it had betrayed him. Alex simply walked out, nodding politely to the students still huddled in the corners. Later, one of them whispered, he didn't even blink. But Alex had. Once, just to see if it would flinch. The Galactic Institute buzzed with the sound of thousands of languages, but for once, they all said the same thing. Did you hear what happened during Carell's lecture? By the next cycle, the incident was everywhere. First, in hushed gossip along the polished stone corridors. Then, in reposted footage spliced from the security drones that had managed to capture fragments before being shredded. The clip of the predator halting, staring down a lone, unarmed human, and retreating, that hit the Institute's internal network within 12 hours. Within 24, it was off-world. By 36, it was on every academic feed from Ovrona to Kess. The Galactic News Grid's lead anchor opened with Deathworlders, not extinct, and apparently still house-trained. Alex, for his part, had no intention of being interviewed. He ignored the swarm of curious students now waiting for him outside Lecture Hall 3. The same ones who'd barely acknowledged his existence 2 days ago now stumbled over themselves to ask questions. The only person he spoke to that morning was a maintenance drone blocking the corridor near the mess hall. He sidestepped it and muttered, "You're in the way, friend." The drone reversed instantly. It wasn't even programmed for linguistic processing. Back in Hall 3, the scene had been restored, chairs repaired, lights replaced, claw marks buffed out with a disturbing amount of polish, but the room still felt different and emptier. Professor Carell hadn't shown up. Instead, a young administrator named Turn Levo, a lanky being with luminous throat sacs, stood nervously at the podium. Today's lecture on Deathworlder mythology has been suspended. The faculty is currently reassessing certain classifications. In the meantime, Observer Alex from Earth has agreed to provide a cultural overview of his species. Murmurs again, but no laughter this time. Alex walked in late, no fanfare, just a plain data slate in one hand and a cup of what the food dispensers optimistically labeled coffee in the other. He nodded at Turn Levo, who looked like he might combust from anxiety, then stepped up. There was no smirk now, no posturing. Just a man who'd already saved the room once, and now owed them the truth. He set the slate down. "All right," he began, voice low but steady. "Let's start with gravity." A projection flickered on behind him, displaying Earth's planetary statistics. Earth's gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. You've probably read that, but I don't think most of you understand what that means, unless you've felt it. We weren't built to be light. Every motion costs something. Our bodies are dense muscle, bone, organs. When we fall, it hurts. When we run, we sweat, burn calories like kindling, and breathe in the raw atmospheric mix of oxygen and nitrogen just to keep pace. A tentacled student raised an appendage slowly, but that level of gravitational force would crush the vascular systems of most known species. Alex nodded. It nearly crushed ours, too. That's why our circulatory systems work like pressurized plumbing, hearts the size of fists, arteries that flex, bones so thick they sometimes don't break when they should, which creates its own problems. He tapped the display, switching to a skeletal diagram. "You see this?" He highlighted a femur. "Fractured one of mine when I was 17. Took 4 months to walk right again. No genetic regen, no cellular rebalance tanks. Just surgery, a cast, and a long, miserable period of physical therapy." He looked up. "That's how we do it, the hard way." Another student, this one scaled and green, tilted their head. "Why not move to a more hospitable world?" "Because Earth is home. We didn't evolve for comfort. We evolved for survival. The weather can kill you in a dozen ways. We have storms that level cities. Water vapor funnels that can toss a vehicle like a toy. We built under that sky. We fought each other under it too, which admittedly is one of the darker parts of our story." He paused, letting the silence settle. "We learned to live with pain. We had to. On Earth, everything either wants to eat you, infect you, or outcompete you. You can die from a scratch if you're unlucky. Our immune systems got fast, reckless. Sometimes they overshoot and kill us from the inside out, but when they work, they work." Levo, still near the podium, cleared his throat sacs gently. "And your lifespan? It was believed early humans barely lived past 60 cycles." Alex gave a humorless smile. "That was true once. Industrial pollution, bad medicine, poor understanding of microbiology. But we got better. We had to. And now? 200 years, on average. Not because our genes got better. Because we did." He leaned forward slightly. "Every time Earth tried to kill us, we found a way to survive it. That's what a death world does. It doesn't make you strong. It makes you desperate, innovative. It teaches you that the universe doesn't care about your comfort, and if you want to keep breathing, you'd better adapt." A younger Avron student near the middle, feathers puffed in uncertainty, raised a wing. "But the Predator Corax class. It shouldn't be susceptible to verbal command. They're bred without social compliance reflexes." Alex looked him dead in the eye. "I wasn't giving a command. I was establishing dominance." The student blinked rapidly. "With just a word?" "With everything behind the word," Alex said. "Body language, tone, breathing pattern, pupillary dilation, eye contact. You think that creature's never seen another apex predator before? It saw one in me, and it backed down." The room went utterly still. And finally, Alex added, "That thing wasn't the scariest thing in that room." He let the words hang, then tapped the console again, shutting the display off. "I'm not here to scare you," he said, quieter now. "But don't lie to yourselves. Deathworlders didn't go extinct. We just stopped sending invitations." He stepped down without another word. No applause. Just stunned silence. Levo stood there, his throat sacs visibly trembling. Alex paused on his way out. I'd recommend updating the archive classifications. And then, he left. Carell watched all of it from a side feed in his office. He hadn't left his quarters since the breach. The Institute's administrators hadn't contacted him yet, perhaps out of pity, or shock, or both. He had taught for 92 years, had debated with elders from the Qatari Corps, had published 17 papers on evolutionary bottlenecks in pre-oxygenated worlds. And yet all it took was one calm sentence from one Deathworlder to unmake all of it. He looked at his lecture notes, then slowly deleted the folder. The official announcement came 2 cycles later. Galactic Archive Amendment #4421A. Planet Earth status updated. Deathworld Class 5. Intelligent species, Homo sapiens. Current status, active. Cultural threat level, unknown. Caution advised. The Institute posted it without commentary, but the implications rippled everywhere. The diplomatic councils began emergency meetings. Research departments reopened long-abandoned Terran studies. Defense committees requested updated intel. Some called for peace offerings, others, quarantines. Most just stared at the footage and whispered the word again and again. Stay. Security personnel followed Alex now. Not because he was dangerous, though, privately. Many of them had flagged him as potentially deterrent to hostile fauna in their reports, but because no one wanted a second incident. After the Predator breach, the Institute's internal council quietly pushed through a protocol. No Deathworlder walks unescorted through high-traffic wings. Alex didn't protest. But he noticed. 3 days had passed since the lecture hall incident. During that time, Carl's resignation was accepted with a single-line announcement. Professor Emeritus Carl has stepped down to pursue independent research. No one bought it. The man hadn't even cleared his office. It was said he sat motionless for hours in front of the old archives, watching grainy footage of lightning storms and volcanic eruptions on pre-collapse Earth. Alex hadn't spoken to him since. In fact, he'd barely spoken at all. Until now. Please state your medical history, in full. The diagnostic scanner in medbay blinked politely at him. The nurse, a translucent-skinned Voserie technician named Bren, hovered nearby with an expression of forced calm. Alex gave a tired sigh and sat on the padded bench. You want the long version or the short one? Whichever is medically accurate. Alex rubbed the back of his neck. Concussion at age 12. Broken femur at 17, first and second degree burns on both arms, campfire accident. 2 cracked ribs from boxing, separated shoulder, multiple lacerations, kidney stone once. That sucked. Bren stared. When did these injuries occur? Within the last decade? Kidney stone was 3 years ago. The rest, childhood through early adulthood. She blinked slowly. You were permitted to box? For fun. Some people wrestle. Others run into each other on ice with knives on their feet. Humans are complicated. She made a noise that sounded suspiciously like a whimper and returned to the scanner. Your skeletal density is abnormally high. Organ placement is inefficient. Your cardiac pressure is near hemorrhagic levels. Your immune system is inflamed. Alex raised an eyebrow. Inflamed? There's no other word for it. It's like your body is preparing for an infection at all times. He gave a small, almost sad smile. It is. She hesitated, looking down at her tablet. And yet, you've survived. We always have, Alex replied, softer now. But not without cost. He didn't elaborate, and Bren didn't ask. But she logged his file with a tag rarely used in her profession: unclassifiable resilience. That evening, as the moons of Corvallis drifted above the glass domes of the Institute, Alex sat outside the observatory dome, cross-legged, eating a protein bar that tasted like citrus and regret. A familiar voice interrupted him. You're hard to find. He looked up. Jiren, one of the few students who hadn't run from the Predator, mostly because her species froze when afraid. A towering Avaxi, all ridged plates and dark copper scales. She stood beside him awkwardly, her arms clasped. I wasn't hiding, he said, tearing off another bite. I know, you don't hide. Alex smiled faintly. She sat down beside him, careful not to snap the decorative grass. You scared the galaxy, you know. He nodded. It scares me too, sometimes. That thing, what did you see when it charged? Alex's jaw flexed. He took a moment. I saw something that didn't care who we were, that didn't stop to think, or negotiate, or recognize the Institute's authority. It was just hunger and instinct. You can't reason with something like that. And yet it listened. No, Alex corrected. It hesitated. That's different. She tilted her head. Why? He leaned back on his elbows, staring up at the stars. Because Earth made things like that. Bigger ones too. The kind that don't stop even when you yell. So, you learn early, if you're not the apex, you become prey. But humans, we adapted not by being the strongest. We learned to think like the predators that hunted us, to understand them, anticipate them. You trained? Not formally. But everyone on Earth learns. Just by living, you feel it. When something's behind you, when it's not safe to camp in that direction, when the birds go quiet, we evolved to listen to the silence. Jaren was quiet for a while, her claws resting lightly on the grass. The professors used to joke about Deathworlders, said they couldn't possibly have formed culture, that violence would have wiped out intelligence. Alex glanced sideways at her. That's because they don't understand suffering. She looked up. You embrace it? No, we hate it. But we've learned from it. It shapes us. On Earth, the question was never, is this fair? It was always, what are you going to do about it? He fell silent. Then added, that's what Earth makes. Jaren didn't answer, but she stayed a while longer. Not everyone who learned about humanity was ready to listen. She was. The next day, the Institute scheduled a debrief. It was called an interdisciplinary review of terrestrial capabilities, but everyone knew what it really was, a containment measure. A panel of researchers, defense consultants, and planetary envoys gathered in Hall 7, nervously tapping their data feeds as Alex entered, flanked by his assigned security escort. One of the panelists, a Sorthal with pale ridges and cold, white eyes, stood first. Observer Alex, thank you for joining. Before we proceed, are you armed? Alex looked at him flatly. No. Are you capable of biological emission attacks, pheromonal control, or localized energy manipulation? No. The panelist blinked, confused. Then how did you control the Corex-class predator? Alex took the center stand without invitation. I didn't control it. I understood it. He looked around the room. You want to know what Earth makes? It makes creatures that survive. Against all odds. Not because we're designed better, or because we're braver or stronger, but because we're adaptable. And when we're not, we become what we need to be. He let the pause stretch. We make medicine out of mold. We use venom to stop heart attacks. We turned killing into art and war into science, but we also invented jazz and dry humor and sarcasm and soccer riots. We carry trauma in our bones. We break, heal, then run again. Another panelist, a calm-voiced being with hexagonal pupils, leaned forward. You say, we, but no other humans have made themselves known. Where are they? Alex looked down, then back up. We stopped reaching out a while ago. We watched how the galaxy treated the other fringe species, how the Institute labeled every hostile planet as impossible. We realized we weren't ready to be understood. But you came here. Because eventually, someone was going to wake up a caged predator and get eaten, trying to prove they were the smartest person in the room. He met every gaze. I just didn't think it'd happen during a lecture. The panel didn't issue a public statement. But 3 hours later, the Institute authorized the formation of a new department. Terran Anthropological Studies. Anne offered Alex a chair. He declined. I'm not here to teach, he said. I'm here to remind. Meanwhile, a small note appeared in the archives. Carrel, Professor Emeritus, removed 23 publications from the Galactic Index. Cited reason, error in foundational assumptions. No one had ever done that before. And in the dead of night, under artificial stars, Carrel visited the reinforced observation deck that housed the Korak specimen, now sedated, contained, harmless. He watched it sleep, then looked over at the new sign on the wall. Quarantine Protocol 7. Species, Corax Class Apex. Hostile World Origin, Class 4. And beneath it, smaller text. If threatened, avoid eye contact, do not speak. Carell smiled faintly. Just once. Then left the room. The Galactic Institute's newest wing didn't have a name yet. Construction crews had worked non-stop for 2 cycles to clear a central space inside the administrative dome. A vast, glass-paneled atrium was selected for its security capacity and visibility. Bright natural light streamed down from the dome's apex, reflecting off metallic support ribs shaped like a Terran ribcage, someone's idea of symbolism. But the room sat empty, still waiting for its purpose to catch up to its reality. Until now. Levo stood near the door, adjusting his collar for the 3rd time in a minute. He exhaled through his throat sacs and glanced down at the newly engraved placard. The Deathworlder Wing. Dedicated to resilience, adaptability, and the intelligent defiance of extinction. It was a bold choice. Levo didn't like bold choices. He checked his chrono. Alex was late. But not by much. Alex walked in alone, his boots echoing faintly on the polished floor. He wore the same black shirt and utility pants as usual. No robes, no insignia, no weapons. Just a datapad tucked under one arm. Levo perked up. It's an honor to... Don't. The assistant stammered to silence. Alex looked around the hall. This feels excessive. Levo chuckled nervously. You've become something of a symbol. I didn't apply for that. Symbols never do. Alex didn't respond. Instead, he walked to the front display, an interactive hologram, surrounded by 12 low seats in a semicircle. Students would soon gather here for seminars on post-extinction survivorship, a phrase someone in public relations clearly thought sounded more palatable than what happens when the galaxy gets it all wrong. Alex activated the holo. Earth appeared, swirling blue and green. Cloud systems spun across the Pacific. The ice caps shimmered at the poles. It looked peaceful, even beautiful. He stared at it for a long time, then tapped a section of the surface. The display zoomed in: desert, rugged mountains, scar tissue from ancient tectonic conflict, dried riverbeds, dust storms. That's the Mojave, he said aloud, as if someone had asked. We trained there. He didn't say who we were. Levo stepped forward cautiously. We've been getting inquiries. From research planets, from governments, even from military academies. They want to know more about you. Alex tilted his head. So now they're interested. It's not just curiosity. Some are nervous. Others, hopeful. You want to know if we're dangerous, Alex said, not unkindly. Levo hesitated. Alex turned to face him. We are. The assistant tensed. But not how you think, Alex continued. Humans are dangerous the way pressure builds in a sealed chamber. You don't see it until it's too late. We don't like being feared, but we know how it feels. We spent most of our history fearing each other. That's where the danger comes from. Not because we're cruel, because we understand cruelty. Levo swallowed hard. Then why did you come here? Because someone had to. He turned back to the projection. And because we used to ask the same questions you're asking now. What's out there? Are we alone? Should we reach out? Should we wait? Levo took a step forward. Why did you stop sending messages? Alex tapped a key on the pad. The projection shifted to old Terran broadcasts, radio, binary pings, coded waves flinging themselves into the cosmos. He let it play for a while before answering. Because we didn't get answers. Not real ones. Just signals we couldn't decode. Static. A probe here and there. Enough to let us know something was out there, but not enough to connect. So you gave up? No. He smiled faintly. We got smarter. We realized we were shouting into a room full of people who weren't ready to talk, so we stopped shouting. We watched, waited. And now? Alex stepped away from the console. Now the room finally looked back. In the following weeks, the Deathworlder Wing became the most visited space on campus. Students rotated through in small groups, watching Earth's history unfold in annotated holograms. They saw the eruption of Krakatoa, the devastation of global wars, the launch of early spacecraft held together with stubbornness and duct tape. They learned about plate tectonics, about venomous mammals, about microscopic parasites that could rewrite your DNA just by existing. They learned what it meant to build civilization in defiance of nature itself. Some cried. Some left in silence. Most returned. And when the galaxy's academic bodies convened that cycle to update classification standards, the vote was unanimous. Earth would remain a death world. But the term would no longer carry the connotation of inevitable extinction. Instead, it would reference the rare conditions in which life had not only survived, but evolved to stare down the abyss and say, "Not yet." Alex declined another faculty position. He stayed on as a consultant, but refused the office. Instead, he could be found sometimes in the quieter areas of the grounds near the ornamental lake or beneath the dome gardens, answering questions from brave students who worked up the nerve to ask. One day, a young Sarid student, barely half his height and covered in downy fuzz, approached with an air of cautious reverence. "Sir," she said, clutching her tablet, "is it true humans enjoy danger?" Alex considered that. Some do. But why? He shrugged. Because when everything's easy, nothing feels earned. She tilted her head. "Is that why Earth made you this way?" No, his expression grew distant. Earth made us because it didn't care if we survived. And we did anyway. She opened her mouth to say something else, but Alex gently raised a hand. "Don't try to be like us. You don't need to be." "But, aren't you better?" "No," he said firmly. "We're older in some ways, more used to pain. But that doesn't make us better. It just means we already know how to live without guarantees." He offered a small smile. "Your generation might figure out how to live without fear. That's harder." She wrote that down in her notes. Later, it would be quoted in a paper titled Lessons from the Last Death World. Alex's final public statement before departing the institute was simple. It came during a quiet panel on cross-species ethics. A question was asked rhetorical, really. If humanity was truly capable of such savagery, how did it not destroy itself? Alex leaned into the microphone. "We almost did." Then he stood up, nodded to the other panelists, and walked out. He boarded a diplomatic vessel bound for a quieter star system, one that had been silent for too long. Years later, a copy of Alex's initial medical readout would be stored in the Galactic Health Index as an educational anomaly. The file included annotated scans of fractured bones, healed through rudimentary orthopedic techniques, viral antibodies acquired through exposure rather than vaccination, and a stress profile that suggested chronic cortisol adaptation. There was a single note appended to the bottom. If encountered, do not attempt to triage without human oversight. Their tolerance for trauma is higher than most, but their thresholds are not limitless. They survive not because they're invincible, but because they treat survival as a skill. Professor Carrel was never heard from again. Some said he returned to his homeworld, defeated. Others said he joined a research vessel studying proto-intelligence on ocean worlds, trying to rebuild his understanding of what makes something worthy of being called sentient. But those who had known him well claimed they received a final message. No signature. Just a single line. I was wrong, but at least now I know what I missed. Earth remains classified as a death world. Not as a threat, as a warning, and, in quieter circles, as hope.